There are a lot of different gimmick matches out there, so many that WWE even managed to theme a few pay-per-views after some. But that's not always a good thing, especially when you consider all of the great gimmick matches that haven't seen the light of day in quite some time. But whether we have a good gimmick match or a bad gimmick match, either way, they're the topic of this episode, because today... Thank you to Cool Ass Jack and Inigo Montoya and all of my other Patreon supporters for all the help during these times. Okay, so 3 things before we get started. Number 1, when it comes to the good gimmick matches, I'm only talking about those who haven't appeared in WWE for quite some time or possibly even ever, as I'm sure there are some other promotions out there that have done these types of matches in recent years. Secondly, when it comes to talking about the bad gimmick matches, as much as I hate the Punjabi prison and anything on a pole, I won't be talking about those matches here in this list today. Reason being is because I don't think we'll be seeing them anytime soon, at least I hope not. Instead, I'm using this list to talk about gimmick matches that I think I'm going to be seeing within the next year, as not only are these match types that I personally detest, but they're also going to be match types that happen way too often. And the third thing I want to say before we get into the video is, well, I hope that you're subscribed to this channel, as it really does help things out. Anyway, with that being said, let's get on into it. Okay, so let's start this list off with a gimmick match for a gimmick match. Back in 1990, the grand finale match was the main event for that year's Survivor Series, and it was a bout that featured all of the survivors teaming up together for one more match, with all of the babyfaces on one team and all of the surviving heels on another, resulting in a 3-on-5 handicap match of Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, and Tito Santana taking on Ted DiBiase, Rick Martel, the Warlord, Hercules, and Paul Roma. Now, of course, today, WWE Survivor Series is more about the brand warfare than it is about the traditional Survivor Series match, therefore not really making the whole grand finale match of survival a possibility. And also, from a kayfabe standpoint, it's kind of hard to justify why all the heels and all the baby faces are on separate teams, especially if those teams are uneven. But you can actually solve both of these problems in one shot. I mean, we could just get rid of the brand split, but saving that, we could instead use the whole Raw vs SmackDown thing to our advantage. By simply having more traditional Survivor Series matches of brand versus brand, you could then take all the remaining survivors from each brand and put them against each other in the grand finale match of survival. Sure, they may not be divided in neat little packages of heels versus faces, but it'll get you a pretty similar result. Alright, now we definitely have way too many of these types of matches, but I'm not just talking about the unsanctioned match, as I'm really talking about any of these different types of matches that all have the same effect, even though they do go by different names. The street fight, the unsanctioned match, lights out matches, whatever you want to call these, personally, I have had enough, and as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty much all the same, with the exception of the street fight, because then you at least get to wear jeans like it's Casual Friday. And it's not just these 3 either, as there are plenty of other matches that really boil down to the same effect. That this bout is going to be so dangerous and so brutal that the company has no choice but to suspend their normal laws in order to let these 2 wrestlers go at it, especially because they're in the middle of a heated rivalry that just can't be contained any other way. This presents several problems. First of which, most of the time, I never really think of these feuds as being that intense that it warrants a match of this nature. Secondly, if a match is really supposed to be so horrific that the company has no choice but to wash their hands of it, then why exactly are they airing it on their television program? And furthermore, over the past 2 years, I think it's safe to say that we've seen enough empty arena matches to last a lifetime, and I certainly don't need any more. I tend to be a sucker for tournaments, and as much as I want the Cruiserweight Classic back, I will also say that the King of the Ring has a special place in my heart. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, didn't we just get this with King Woods being crowned at the last King of the Ring tournament? Well, yes, we did, but that was eked out over several nights. What I'm talking about is I want to return to the old school King of the Ring, where the whole tournament happened on just one show. Now, I've already covered the logistical reasons of why this is not a preferred format, but personally, I just think it adds so much more to the atmosphere, and it makes the whole thing feel so much more special. Furthermore, I also want to see another return to form where top tier main event quality talent gets crowned king. Ted DiBiase, Macho Man Randy Savage, Bret the Hitman Hart. These are the exact kinds of winners that I'm talking about. And while not everyone who wears the crown would end up having the exact same trajectory as Stone Cold Steve Austin or Brock Lesnar, at least they had a better shot at it than, well, Baron Corbin. And here's another type of match that has many similar forms, but pretty much all amounts to the same nonsense. Strap matches, dog collar matches, pretty much the same thing. Anything that involves two wrestlers being tethered to each other. Now, I understand back in the day this was a great way to demonstrate that this was a serious blood feud, but just like I said with my previous entry of matches that I'm done with, I don't think anyone really buys blood feuds like they used to. But on top of that, having the chain or rope or strap or whatever it is in play gives you another element that can easily get tangled up and throw off the entire mechanics of a wrestling match. Remember, wrestling at its best is only supposed to look dangerous. Additionally, unlike a ladder or a chair or a table, any of the spots that involve a strap or a rope or a chain really don't add that much to the bout for me. At least not enough for me to sit through a theater in the round performance of the Defiant Ones. Now, let's see who's old enough to get that joke. Old school WCW fans probably remember how much the company was known for all kinds of crazy gimmick matches. And while they may not all be great, there are a fair few of them that should have never gone out of style, and one of them is of course Battle Bowl. This gimmick was more or less an entire event all unto itself, and it was broken down into two main parts. First was the Lethal Lottery, which saw tag teams formed up at random to go against each other, and this made for some pretty interesting combinations. And then the winners of all those matches would then have to square off against each other in a battle royal, in order to determine an overall winner. And while Chikara and TNA have used this format ever since WCW was purchased by WWE, just calling it a different name, it's still not the same as having the real deal, which is something that only WWE can do, at least for now. But if they can bring back Halloween Havoc and Starrcade, well, then there's an outside chance that we might get a return of Battle Bowl. And hopefully it'll be better done than what they did with Starrcade. Does anyone remember when TLC matches used to be one of the highlights of the show? Yeah, we're getting to that point where it's kind of hard to remember when TLC matches were good. Back when the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian ruled the roost, those three letters meant that the tag team division was going to another level, showing off car crash wrestling at its absolute finest. But over time, those three letters have just come to mean less and less, somehow reaching bottom when they named a pay-per-view after it. When it comes to this match, in order for it to work, I think you need the exact, precise right three teams in order to pull it off. And ever since the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian, I don't think we've seen three teams in WWE that have the right chemistry in order to make this happen. And also, it really doesn't help that WWE's tag division hasn't been prioritized like it used to be overall. While WCW might have a reputation for having a lot of weird, goofy gimmick matches, ECW had the advantage of doing the gimmick match and doing it well. And another lost gem from the House of Extreme would just have to be the Double Jeopardy match. This happened towards the end of ECW's reign, but I look at it as just one more gift that ECW would give to the world. And surprisingly, it's a gift that really hasn't been given all that much ever since it first happened. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated, a Double Jeopardy match features two one-on-one singles bouts happening at the exact same time in the exact same ring. All the participants can interact with each other all they want, but you could only score a victory by getting one over on your specific designated opponent. And then, once both winners have been declared, the two of them would have to go against each other to determine an overall victor. And while ECW itself only had one of these matches, I say it's high time for it to make a return, as ECW really knew how to do wrestling right in a lot of different ways. But I am going to be singing their praises a little bit more in just a little bit. I'm sure there are plenty of you out there who just love the Elimination Chamber match. However, I have never been all that big of a fan of it. By and large, I've never taken the whole most dangerous structure in all of professional wrestling thing seriously, as to me it more looks like a blatant opportunity just to sell a playset. And keep in mind that this is coming from a guy who thinks that cell matches are completely unnecessary, because if you did cage matches right, you wouldn't need to have the cell, now would you? And I also really never bought into the idea that Eric Bischoff created this outside of kayfabe, or that Vince McMahon would listen to a Bischoff idea. Not that it being a Bischoff idea would make a difference anyhow, but furthermore, I'm over all kinds of weird metal structures adorning my rings. Between the giant dome roof and the plexiglass pods, the whole thing comes across as an idea that somebody who didn't really like wrestling would come up with in order to make fun of it. Actually, come to think about it, maybe Bischoff did come up with this idea after all. And the number one gimmick match I want to see make a comeback is the Championship Scramble. This was an absolutely great idea, and I have no idea why WWE doesn't use it more often. Happening back at Unforgiven 2008, the way the match worked was simple. 5 participants would all go against each other in order to win championship gold. The match would start with 2 individuals going one-on-one, and then after specific time intervals, another one would enter until all 5 participants were in the match. And from here, they would all continue to wrestle against each other for a designated amount of time. But within this time, any pinfall or submission victory scored by a wrestler would result in that wrestler becoming the interim champion. That is, until someone else scores a victory and then they would get the mantle. This would continue until the clock winds down, and whoever picked up the most recent victory when the clock reaches 0 becomes the official winner and the official champion. And while I understand that the rarity of this match type really does help to make it feel special, I have to say I think we've waited long enough and it's time to do it again. And here's the big one, as I'm sure there are many of you out there who just love this match. But for me, I've never gotten the big deal. Most of the time, while it's advertised that there are 3 men or 3 women who are going to be wrestling each other, it usually just ends up with one person spending most of the match outside of the ring taking a nap after a usually innocuous move. I don't get the point of hyping up 3 participants for a match when most of the time it's just a one-on-one that operates with Lucha Libre tag rules. And I know it was just praising the TLC matches of yesteryear, but in those cases, it was 2 on 2 on 2, resulting in an even number of wrestlers, therefore everybody had a dance partner. When it comes down to it, I think a lot of people overlook the true value of the 2-party system when it comes to professional wrestling. Heels and faces, good guys and bad guys, color commentators, and play-by-play announcers. The 2 sides to a professional wrestling match is truly integral to the very foundation of what wrestling is all about. And when you throw a 3rd party into the mix, everything is off balance. Now, this is not to say that there aren't 3-person spots that have worked out very good in the past, but for me, they're so few and far between, it's not even worth doing. Although, I will say that another exception to this would be ECW's 3-way dance, because that operated by elimination. While this might seem like a minor rule change, I really do think it makes a huge difference, as another problem I have with the triple threat is that it's really hard to justifiably knock out 2 individuals in order to score a win. And for some reason, while something as simple as a clothesline can take somebody out of a match for minutes at a time, trying to score an actual finish seems almost impossible, usually resulting in finishers getting undermined because there's always somebody there to break up the pin. But with a 3-way dance and with elimination, now wrestlers have motivation to just let things play out. If one of your opponents gets eliminated, well, that just makes your job easier. Well, there you go, 5 gimmick matches that I love and 5 gimmick matches that I think need to go away. But what are some of your favorites and least favorites? Let me know down in the comments, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also thank you to all my awesome Patreons out there, and thank you for watching. And as always, Dave knows.